How do you describe someone like Tony Walton? My father was the kind of man who could turn a pencil and a sheet of paper into pure magic. A visual storyteller who invited you into his world and made you feel at home there. If I had to sum him up in just a few words, he was an endless font of ideas, a visionary builder of worlds, and above all, a designer of dreams.
Everything about Tony sort of welcomed you into his life, into his world, into his arms. I mean, they were just works of art, those costumes. Anything goes! It was the finest silk. It was the most exact beading. The witty details in the costumes. I loved wearing them. When you wear a costume and wish you were alive in that period, because they're not costumes anymore, they're exquisite clothes. The set was incredible. The set was pretty simple when you think about it. That encompassed so many different parts of the ship. Having the band on the poop deck was brilliant. Brilliant. Inhabiting the world that Tony's creating, both on his set and in his costumes. Happily so.
Tony Walton didn't just design for the stage and screen, he redefined them. In A Christmas Carol, he turned an arena into Dickensian London. In Pippin, a single piece of red cloth unfurled into the Holy Roman Empire. In The Wiz, Manhattan became the Emerald City. And in Guys and Dolls, he painted Broadway itself in Technicolor. My father's imagination had no limits and no fear of scale.
He was the greatest scenic and costume designer of his generation. He was both Apollonian and Dionysian, Apollonian being the intellectual, the line, Dionysian being the passion. He combined this with an intelligence and a passion and heart. Beware, you'll scum the ship. When I came into Guys and Dolls, I got a collection of Gauguin prints, and I turned them upside down so I didn't know what it was, just so I'd see the color. And I put them in front of each of Tony's set, and they helped me find a color scheme to go with his incredible Technicolor. I couldn't have done it on my own. Madison Square Garden's Christmas Carol. It ran for 10 years, and it was just spectacular. And the team, Tim Hawkins was the producer for Madison Square Garden, and he introduced us at several events. He called us the Dream Team.
So I'm sitting out in my backyard in Montana, and I'm thinking about Tony, and I find that I'm kind of starting to cry because he's not just in my memories, he's in my DNA. Working with Tony alongside of Mike Nichols, and they were great pals, and they had such respect for each other, was one of the great moments of my career. The attention to detail with objects on the stage, with colors, with textures. I always think of him as being this genius, this giant of theater design, but of course he's done everything, who always made you feel like you were the most important person in the room if you were talking to him.
Tony Walton was, of course, one of the most prolific, brilliant set designers in the American theater. I first had the pleasure and privilege of working with him during The Real Thing, written by Tom Stoppard, directed by Mike Nichols. Anyone who knew Tony knew that he was a man of such gentleness and generosity that you can't think about Tony without thinking of his extraordinary human quality as well.
Tony Walton believed in the art of delight. He found joy in details and meaning in every flourish, and he gave that joy freely to his collaborators, his audiences, his friends.
And every costume fitting, I was a little more blown away by what he was putting me in. Each one of them, just so special.
Tony Walton came full of just joy of life, top of the world, and came to America. And he had started working in London, and he comes to America bringing the English habit of designing both scenery and costumes. It's a wonderful habit to have. You get to create, you're creating the entire world. And Tony brought this by the gallon. And he had such a sense of humanity, of dealing with people, that he could tell stories through the heart.
Tony Walton's archive overflows with scenic renderings, costume sketches, maquettes, and whimsical marginalia, each piece brimming with his boundless creativity. But more than anything, it holds his spirit.
I never saw Tony in a bad mood. I never saw Tony without that beaming face. Our business is very difficult. And it's because there's a lack of money, there's a desperation in our business. And it's not always nice. But whenever Tony was around, you were grateful to be in this business because of a personality like Tony's. Tony, elegance, knowledge, history. Just a great guy.
For our family, this isn't just an auction. It's a celebration of a joyous life, an extraordinary career, and an imagination without limits. It's about friendships and family gathered beneath my father's great circus tent of creativity. And in tribute to the theatrical community he cherished, a portion of the proceeds from this auction will be donated to Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, supporting the very world he devoted his life to. Above all, it's about honoring the dreams brought to life by my father, the incomparable Tony Walton.